Hello guys, Boo here. I'm here with a tutorial. I'm going to be showing you guys how to take a pattern that you draft from Seamly 2D and putting it into Gravit Designer and creating a nice, beautiful tiled pattern, such as the one you see here. Now then, first off, I'd like to apologize for the lack of the pop filter. I hope it doesn't get very annoying. Second of all, why choose Gravit Designer? Well, the fact is, Seamly 2D, the tiled pages it outputs, they work. They do work. However, Seamly 2D, with its layout, it likes to lay out the patterns in however it feels it wants to lay it out. And that could be a little bit detrimental. Second of all, Seamly 2D has a limited features in labeling. Say I want to put label this as the back and the front. I want to put the seam allowance. I want to put like annotations, dates, stuff like that, like punch holes, whatever it is. And it's a little bit hard to do it in this program. It's a little bit easier to do it in like a vector program, like Inkscape, Gravit Designer. I could have done it in Inkscape. In fact, there is a tutorial here on growyourown.clothes.com on how to do it in Inkscape. However, and in fact, I'm going to be drawing a bit of inspiration from this tutorial on how to do an Inkscape and incorporating it in Gravit Designer. I feel like Gravit Designer has a bit of a easier, albeit a little bit mathematical approach and workflow. And so I'm going to be teaching that to you guys. So in order to get started, go ahead and download Gravit Designer. You can get it from designer.io. Go over to downloads right over here. And then pick installer. Don't pick Windows because it's going to download the Windows app. And it may not work on your computer, especially if you don't have a Windows tablet. Pick installer. And then it'll download it and you can install it. It'll be a very easy, lightweight program. So, first things first. Over here in Seamly 2D, create a pattern piece that is a test square of a dimension of 1 by 1. This will ensure that when you import your PDF to any vector program that you are in the right scale, because that is very important to make sure you are in the right scale. If it's not in the right scale, then it's not going to fit when you print it out and towel it, when you towel and print it out. So make sure that you have a test square. I've included it in this PDF. And then go over here to tools for creating details. And then we're going to export it as a PDF. I've already done so. So I'm going to go ahead and close this down. And here is my PDF. I'm going to go over to Gravit Designer. I'm going to pick open from computer file. Open from computer. I'm going to go to my PDF. And the PDF does store the vectors. And we're going to go over here. Okay, first off, click outside of the page. And then make sure that your units are set to inches. Or centimeters, whatever you use. In fact, the square could be like 3 centimeters, or if you don't use inches. Click it. And make sure that, yes, it is 1 by 1. So we are in the right scale. Next of all, we're going to pick, over here we have our layers. We're going to pick the last layer, which is usually the bounding box, the margins. So we're going to delete that because we don't need that. And then we're going to select the test square, delete that. So now we just have our two patterns. We have our front, our back and front. We're going to move these to the side. So press Ctrl A to select all. And then drag them to the side. Now if you can't see them, that's because you need to go over here to view, view mode, full view. That way you can see them on the side. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to change our page size to US letter portrait. Or it could be A4, whatever page you're using. Next, we're going to go over here to pages. We're going to create a new page. And then we're going to go back to our first page. Actually, we're going to go to our second page. What we're going to do is we're going to create the diamond guides. You know how okay, so over here, we have the diamond guides. This shows you how to align the page. And then we have the tiled border around. And we also have the page number. Well, we're going to create the bounding cut line to cut your paper and the diamond guides. So over here on this page, I am going to be taking some dimensions from another tutorial from Berta Style. Berta Style shows how to do this in Illustrator, but I wanted to show you how to do this in a free software because I don't want you guys having to spend $30 a month to use Illustrator just to create tiled pages. It specifies 6.58 by 10, which is 6.625 by 10. So I am going to make my tiled pages 6.625 by 10. You can also do 7 by 10. And in fact, just to make this a little bit easy, so we have whole numbers, I'm going to do 7 by 10. I usually do 6.625 by 10, but we're going to do 7 by 10. That'll work. Okay, so we have this page. What we're going to do is we're going to go over here, create a rectangle, make sure rectangle is selected, and with snapping, make sure it's snap to shapes, snap to pages, snap to anchor points, snap to full pixels, snap to guidelines. Make sure those are selected. So we're going to create a rectangle that is as big as the page. And it'll snap because of the snapping points. We're going to go over here to fills. We're going to pick the gray area around the fill, and we're going to pick the garbage can to get rid of it. Then we're going to pick the plus sign for border, which is synonymous with stroke. So we're going to create a stroke around. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a rectangle, and we're going to make it 0.5 by 0.5. That's 0.5 inches by 0.5 inches. We're going to leave the fill. We're going to make sure there's no border. We're going to set the fill to black. Over here at angle, we're going to pick 45 degrees. Now, we're going to create a layer. We're going to call it diamond guides. We're going to put our rectangles in here. Select the layer and pick 50%. That's going to make this rectangle gray. We want to do that because we don't want it to be full black, as this could cover some of the lines in your pattern and it'll make it hard to cut out. So we make our diamond guide gray. We're going to go ahead, and with the alignment, we're able to align it right in the middle of the page and right on the perimeter of the page. So we have 3.1, 3.1, 9.6 as the measurements. We're going to go ahead and pick that. Have our diamond guide right there, and it's good to go. So now we want to create diamond guide on the bottom, on the left, and on the right. So in order to make sure they're even, what we're going to do is we're going to pick transform. We're going to go ahead and make sure the move is 0. We're going to set copies to 1 because we want to duplicate it. We want to move it and duplicate it. And make sure that Y is set to 10 because 10 is the height of the page. So we're going to pick apply. If we zoom out, we see that we have an extra one that is perfectly aligned to the edge of the bottom. Now we're going to go ahead and take care of the left and the right. So we're going to select this, Control C, Control V to paste. And we're going to use the alignment guides to let us align it to the middle. And then we're going to move it over to the left. So we have it perfectly aligned. We're going to select this one, go back to transform, Set y to 0 because we're going to move it to the right. Set the x value to 7 because 7 is the width, and make sure copies is 1. And now we have our diamond guides. I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to save it to my desktop, even though I don't like saving things to my desktop. I'm just going to call it 1. We're going to go back to our first page. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a grid to cover our pattern. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a layer for my patterns so I can organize them. I'm going to go ahead and dump them in here. I'm going to call it pattern. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to lock the pattern file. Pattern layer, I mean. I'm going to call this grid. I'm going to create a rectangle. And I'm going to make it 7 by 10, the size of the tile. Except it didn't take my 10. There we go. We're going to get rid of the fill. Make sure you select the fill. There we are. We're going to give it a border. We're going to give it a border of 2 points. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to transform. We're going to leave 7 on the X move. So we're going to move it on the X axis by 7 inches because that's how wide it is. And this number is going to depend on how big your pattern is. You might have to experiment. You might want to do this 1 by 1. So I'm going to pick 1 copies. I mean, we're going to see why. Because the pattern, your pattern might be different. It's going to be different from mine, of course. It might be bigger, it might be smaller. You might need more tiles, you might need less tiles. So what I do is I pick apply. Make sure copies is 1. X is 7. And it creates a new tile right next to the first tile. Do it again. Now I know my pattern needs 4 tiles wide. Oh, don't want to do that. It needs 4 tiles wide and 3 tiles long. So as you can see, 4 tiles would perfectly encompass my pattern horizontally. Vertically, it needs 3. So this all depends on your pattern. This is just my pattern. So now that we created 1 row, depending on however many pages you need for 1 row, we're going to create another sequence of 1 row. We're going to create another row. So we're going to go ahead. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the first row. I'm going to pick modify group selection. This will group it all together. I'm going to pick the group selection, go back to transform, set X to 0, and set Y to 10 because the tile is 10 inches tall. I'm going to pick 2 because I know that my tiling has to be 3 tall. And because it's 2 copies because it counts the first one as 1 copy. So it's 2 copies because as you can see, it creates 3 rows. And as you can see, my pattern is perfectly encompassed in this grid. And so I'm going to go ahead and select the rest of the grid, the rest of the groups. And I'm going to go ahead and group those groups together. So now we have 1 grid. You can, of course, change your pattern around. You can move it, whatever you want to do with it. Now, at this point, you could also put labels. You could put your fold line, like right here. You could put your seam allowance information, grain line, punch holes, notches, whatever you want to do. I'm just going to choose not to because I want to keep this tutorial short. I just want to show you how to tile it. This is one of the reasons why I like Gravit Designer. I mean, Inkscape can do the same thing, but I like the clean format, the clean interface of Gravit Designer to put labels and such. Okay, so next step is we are going to create the cropping mask. The cropping mask, and then I'm going to explain a little bit further as we create it, because I want to show you guys. It's more easier to see than to explain it. So we're going to create a new layer. We're going to call it page crop. So I'm going to create another rectangle as wide as the page. I am going to change the fill to black. There is no particular reason to change the fill color. This is just so you can see it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press copy, paste, change the fill color to white. And on that top rectangle, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the dimensions to 7 by 10, the size of the tile. And now I need to center this in the middle. So what I'm going to do is right over here, I'm going to pick align center. And over here, I'm going to pick align middle. Now we have this in the center. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the top rectangle, the bottom rectangle. I'm going to go to modify, create compound shape, subtract. Now what this is going to do, and in fact I probably shouldn't even have filled this. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the fill of the middle one. Garbage can that. And I'm going to change the color of my page so you can see. You don't have to do this. This has created a frame. This frame, I'm going to make it white, of course, right now. This frame is going to block out the rest of the pattern that is not to be seen within the page tile. And you'll see what I mean in a little bit, but it's just to block out the rest of the pattern so you can only see the pattern that needs to be cut out. The part of the pattern needs to be cut out. So we got that taken care of. Next step is we're going to go back to page 2 where we have our diamond guides. We're going to select our layer, the entire layer. We're going to press Control C to copy, Control V to paste. Then we're going to go back to align center and align middle. We are going to get rid of the bounding box rectangle. We only needed that to align the diamonds. Because as you can see, the diamonds are perfectly aligned to the page crop line in the middle. This is going to help us when we cut out our pattern to align it perfectly. I'm going to go ahead and save it. Collapse these layers. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to create our page number. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave the page color this way so you can see the page crop. You don't have to, because if I set it to white, you can't see it. But I'm just doing this for demonstrative purposes. By the way, get rid of page 2. Because if you don't, it's going to print along with the page of the pattern. And we don't want to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create text. Well, first we're going to create a new layer. We're going to call it page number. Okay. And then I'm going to click anywhere. And the standard format for tiling your print or tiling your print and creating like rows is you put the letter name of A to the first row, and then the next row is B, next row C, next row D, and then of course 1 for the first page of that row. So second page of the first row is A2, third page of the third row is C3, so forth. So I'm going to put A1 for the first page, and then I am going to set the size to be 100 points. You don't have to use this font. This is my favorite font to use. I like to use, let's see. Oh no, would you look at that? My font is gone. No. Oh, it's because it hasn't loaded my system fonts. Okay, there's web fonts, there's imported fonts, and system fonts. I have a lot of system fonts. These are the ones that are installed on my computer. And I like to use Segoy script. And now I'm going to align this to the center. And then of course I can do that with the guides. Now, I'm going to pick the page number layer, and I'm going to set the opacity to 30% because we don't want it to be completely black. Otherwise it could cover parts of the pattern. So we got our page number set. I'm going to lock it. Now, here's where we select our grid and our pattern. So we're going to unlock the pattern, select the grid, select the pattern. What we're going to do is we're going to take the corner, this top left corner, put it all the way to the top left corner of the page. Okay? And here's where we need a little bit of math, because we need to align this grid to the page crop lines. So what we need to do is we're going to go to transform. We're going to set our Y value to 0. We're going to make sure our copies are 0. We're going to leave everything at 0, scale 100%, whatever. So there's a difference between 7 by 10 and 8.5 by 10. We need to figure out that difference, and that's where we break out the calculator. So first off, we're going to move everything over to the on the x-axis, and we need to figure out how much in order for these to align. So what we're going to do is we're going to subtract from 8.5. That's the size of the paper I'm printing. If it's A4 page you're printing on, it'll be different. You'll be subtracting from that instead. So we're going to subtract 7 because 7 is the width of the page tile, and we get 1.5. Now we're not done here. We need to divide this by 2 because there's 2 sides of the paper and there's 2 sides of the diamond guide. The page crop. One side, one side, one side, one side. So we have to divide by 2, which is 0.75. We're going to copy this value and we're going to move on the x-axis by that value. And as you can see, the lines have aligned to the page crop. We're going to do the same thing on the y-axis. So we're going to set this back to 0. And this one's easy. 11 minus 10, which is the length. 11 is the height of the page, of the letter page, and 10 is the height of the page crop. Minus that is 1. Divide that by 2.5. Apply. And as you can see, we've perfectly aligned the first page of the pattern tiling to the page crop. And we've got our text. I'm going to set my color back to normal, to white. You can see the cutting part, the cutting lines. You can see the diamond guides. And in fact, the diamond guides, make sure the diamond guides are below the page crop, like so. Okay? And then this is where we get to the part where we can export our hard work. I'm going to go ahead and go to File, Export, PDF Document. I am going to go to my folder. I'm going to create a new folder for the sake of this tutorial. I'm just going to call it 1. And then I'm going to call this 01 for page 1. You can call it A1, whatever you want to call it. And then if I go over here, look at that. It's all page 1 is all set to go. How do we get to page 2? That's easy. First off, we lock our page crop. Make sure that's locked. Our diamond guides. We leave our grid and our pattern unlocked. You can also leave the page number unlocked. just select your grid and your pattern. Go over to transform. Set the Y to 0. And set this to 7, X to 7, 0 copies. Because we're going to scoot over by 7 because that's how wide the page is. We pick apply. Sorry, I just realized something. That has to be -7. There we are. So we've moved over to page 2. And so we would change our text to A2. And then we would go back to File, Export, PDF. And then we will call this 02. And then if we go back, we have page 2. And then we would do the same thing for, if my mouse decides to work. Oh, my mouse is getting gammy. We would do the same thing for page 3, page 4. So if I keep picking apply, we would eventually get to page 4, and then we would call this A4. And then, of course, if we want to go to the next row, we would just Control Z all the way back. We would pick 0 on the X. We would pick 10 on the Y. Sorry, -10. I can't think negatively. It's not in my brain. Then we get to the next row, and then we would put B2, and then we would move over by 7, move over by 7, move over by 7, undo. Then we would go back down 10 to row C. And that's how you export all of your pattern into tile print, if that makes sense. And you can put all the labels you want on your pattern. And then this is really where Seamly 2D is lacking. It is great. It is fantastic as a drafting software, but it is not good when it comes to page tiling and labeling. And this is where Gravit Designer comes in. I hope that makes sense. And I hope you guys learned something new today, because I sure did in the process of figuring out. I had to actually go through different programs and figure out which one would be the best. I went through, I think, 3 different other programs. This one seemed to be the best, and it really is. So thank you guys for watching. I hope this helped you guys out. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Until next time, see ya.